Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at how you find your intercepts in a quadratic equation. These are both your x and your y-intercepts. We're going to start off with your y-intercept, because that is generally the easiest one to find. So if we look at our y-intercept in these examples, when you're trying to find your y-intercept, just like in linear lines, your first step is to set x to be equal to 0. Okay, so when you do that, you're going to have y is equal to 3, and then instead of x, it's going to be 0 squared plus 12. Instead of x, it's going to be 0 minus 63. 0 squared is 0. 0 times 3 is 0. 0 times 12 is 0 minus 63. 0 plus 0 minus 63 is minus 63, which is my y-intercept. If you'll notice, though, minus 63 is my last number in my equation, which is essentially, if you remember standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c, it is my c value. This is actually a general rule that your y-intercept is always going to be equal to your c value. So basically, the term that doesn't have a variable beside it, the one that's afraid of letters. So using that theory and looking at b, I want you to guess what the y-intercept is. And I want you to keep guessing that until we get there. With that in mind, we're going to break and go for our x-intercept. So just like with the y-intercept, and just like when we're working with linear lines, if you're looking for an x-intercept, your first step is to set your y to be equal to 0. So you're going to have 0 is equal to 3x squared plus 12x minus 63. Your next step is a fairly straightforward step. You're going to fully factor. Now, you can fully factor using many different ways. You can use the grouping and splitting method of complex trinomials, or you can common factor and then use the simple trinomial factoring. In this case, the easier one is to notice, if I look at my three numbers, the 3, the 12, the negative 63, you should notice they are all divisible by 3. So my very first step should be to common factor the 3, which will leave me with x squared plus 4x minus 21. This makes it a lot easier to factor because inside the bracket, you need to figure out what multiplies to give you 21, or negative 21, but adds up to give you 4, which would be 7 and 3. Or in this case, positive 7 and negative 3. Okay, if you're having trouble with this one, I would heavily suggest refreshing your memory in the factoring videos. So now that I have gotten my fully factored term, and I know it's fully factored because I look at each bracket and there's nothing I can divide them both by. So that brings us to our third step, which is solve each linear equation that's made here. Make them both equal to 0. Also, these should be both 0. Okay, so your next step is you're going to make each of these equal to 0. Now, the reason why you want to make them both equal to 0, and the reason why we don't care about the 3, is because this equation is basically saying 3 times a number is 0. So the only way for three numbers multiplying each other to get 0 is for one of them to be 0. It's never going to be 3. 3 is fixed, no matter what. So we need to figure out an x value that will make one of these equal to 0, and another x value to figure out where the other one is going to be equal to 0. So to do that, you're solving for each linear equation. So you're going to move the plus 7 to the other side by subtracting 7 over here, and you're going to move the minus 3 on this side to the other side by adding 3. Which means x is equal to negative 7, and x is equal to 3. These are my two x-intercepts. So you set y equal to 0, you fully factor, and then you solve for your two linear equations at the end. So at this point, I'd suggest pausing the video and trying to solve part B yourself. Are you back with me? I'm assuming you paused. If you didn't, this sounds very, very silly. So here is how the second one would look if you answered it. So once again, y-intercept, you should have been pondering this since the last time, should be plus 24. All right, and then our x-intercept, well, you're going to factor out the 2 because I noticed it's common between all of them. And I know that 6 times 2 will give me 12, and 6 plus 2 will give me 8. And then you are going to make these both equal to 0. And you're going to solve out your x. And these are my two x-intercepts. And that is how you find your y and your x-intercept of quadratic equations. If you have any other questions, concerns, or any additions, please let me know. I hope this video has helped people in finding their intercepts. Have a wonderful day.